Welcome to Merle's Pearls of Relationship Wisdom, where I, Merle and Singer, the relationship miracle worker, talks about all things relationship and how they impact all parts of your life. Today, I have a returning guest. Her name is Suhein Beck.
I'm actually a Circassian, yeah,
That's,
from the Caucasus Mountains in
uh,
what's now southern Russia, but it was our land for 7,000 years until Russia colonized and basically had a war and invaded us for 101 years. So we fought back Russia by ourselves for 101 years, from 1763 to 1864. Thereafter, the few that were able to seek refuge left our homeland and then went through Europe and the Middle East. My family landed in Syria, where I was born. So that's the trajectory,
okay,
like the timeline. So I'm not
okay.
technically Syrian, I'm Circassian, which is a completely different culture. However, I embody and embrace both because I cook like a Syrian and I dance like a Syrian. So
And that's serious.
yeah.
So,
And
with
then 1967 happened. And then 1971 happened in Syria. So it was one war, one revolution. And my family said, okay, we're done with this. So then we sought refuge into Germany through the Tolstoy Foundation. And then we're able to come into the United States legally in 1971. And that's where we set ourselves up for the next round of adventures as well. So there was another war waiting for us here in the United States as well. So it wasn't like we were able to escape our destiny of war and terrorism when we arrived in the United States. We also dealt with a huge amount of racism and discrimination here in the United States. So yeah,
and life goes on.
yeah. So we,
But at least you were able, and this is the power of immigrants to the United States. My grandparents were immigrants. Um, is only the most powerful can withstand emigrating.
yeah.
It's it's I mean, you escape one problem and enter another one
Yeah, with very little.
with
With
very
very
little.
little. I mean, like in some cases, you're starting from below zero because if you don't know the language and you don't know the culture, so it's not just, we start with no money, because that's
Right.
the proverbial cliche of like, I had $200 in my pocket, which, that is true. And you stay at somebody's house until you find a job. And in the highest unemployment rate in America in the 1970s, with the oil embargo and all that, and yeah, that toughens up. So, you know, I really do wish Americans had the opportunity to know more immigrants from an intimate dimension so that they would see and understand and respect what it takes for them to do what they do. And it wasn't by choice. So many cases where we loved our homeland in the Caucasus. All my books, all my work is about my homeland of the Caucasus and our ancient heritage and how beautiful our land was and this homecoming that we all dream of. So in so many cases, these people did not want to leave their homeland country, and yet they had to. So, anyway, let's go on the one-on-one relationships. So, meeting and
I
talking to
I think
people
it's important.
one-on-one.
Yeah. Well, you talked about this will be authentic. This conversation, that's where the authenticity starts from each from our own cultures, from our background, and being in. Um, ha- I, it's true the United States is a land of opportunity, but man, it costs. It
Oh,
costs. And when you said you wish more people knew immigrants uh, at the point that they are, because that's when you're at the bottomest,
mhm.
and and to know,
The pain, the anguish, the loneliness, the, sense of discombobulation. Like, I have a YouTube channel, and on the opening segment of mine, I am underwater and I am opening a book with pages that fly into the water and I'm trying to capture them. And that's symbolic of me trying to learn how to breathe underwater. And that these words, these stories are floating away and I'm trying to capture them and this is my story and I can't and they're floating away. So there's a lot of symbolism there as well, but to me that embodies what it feels like even now. I am still lost between cultures. Even though I've been in the United States the majority of my life, I came as a baby. And yet I still have the triality. I'm not a dual, I'm a tricultural. So it's a schizophrenic ping pong table tennis constant, constant, my personality in one language and my personality in another language and my, output in a social setting is different in each culture, in each grouping. So there's that constant balance as well.
I think the people that rule the country are should be able to take a couple of weeks off and live in different neighborhoods.
Right.
Uh, uh, if there if you're making rules and laws for people, it would be nice to have some intimacy with them.
Mhm.
But isn't that another topic?
Yeah. And I always say, for people that are racist, I dare you to come over to dinner. Just come to my house for dinner. I dare you. I dare you to have one dinner with me and
However,
see if you can hate me after. Try. You can't. You will not be able to hate me.
um,
And it's not because I, put anything in my food other than my love and my spices and, my breath. In Arabic we call it the breath that you infuse into the food. And whatever your mood and your sense is will flow into the food. And so we say she has the breath of cooking, like she has that breath that makes the cooking incredible. She breathes
e-
into it,
like the essence.
the essence. So I dare anyone to hate me after coming over to my house for dinner. Like I challenge anyone. And it's crazy. Last year I had a very unusual situation happen where I was working in property management. That was my first career, and I went back to my career again, just because of the economy and what's going on. Um, I was in the office speaking to a vendor in Spanish to just direct him keys, apartment, permission to enter, etc. Another vendor, a roofing vendor who was American, uh, turned to me and said, "We're in America. You need to speak English." And he said, "Why are you speaking in Spanish?" And just to spite him, I said, well, he doesn't speak Circassian, Arabic, Turkish, or French. So the only other language I can speak with him in is English, in
And it's
Spanish.
Spanish.
And he goes, why do you speak Turkish? Out of all the languages, I
He
thought,
picked that.
like he's going to be discriminative racist against Arabic, right?
Right.
Turkish? Why would you be racist about Turkish? And he goes, why do you speak Turkish? And I said, because I love it. And I love Turkish soap operas. And
And what did he
I
say?
shouldn't have to answer to anyone like that. But I was in a position of customers,
Educating.
customers. I was in a position as an authority of customer service. I represent a company. I'm going to stay in that zone, right? And I said, because I love Turkish soap operas and music and culture and their art. And he said, oh, well, my girlfriend is Armenian and she would hate you. And I was like, I bet she wouldn't. Not only would she love me, but technically, we are cultural cousins because Armenians come from the South Caucasus Mountains and I come from the North Caucasus Mountains. So regionally, we are one. And so it's interesting that you say that because we actually are cultural cousins. I'm Circassian, she's Armenian. We belong to the Caucasian region. And he goes, and he flustered. The next day and the next day, like, because he was a roofing contractor, so there was work to be done. And I reported this to my company because it continued to grow in agitation. And I reported it in an incident report. And then finally, on the last day, he basically was sitting at my desk. I was wearing my name badge, Suhein Beck, and I was getting information to give him so that he can go do some more work. And then he looks at my badge because everyone was calling me Sue, Sue, Sue. He looks at my badge. He goes, what is that? And I knew. And I said, that's my name. He goes, what kind of a name is that? Where are you from? Where were you born? I, you know, now I can say, what are you, an ICE agent? At this point. But, and I said, I was born in Damascus. And he said, no, you weren't. And then he had to mansplain over me that I was not born in Damascus. Mind you, I was more blonde back then. I just colored my hair on New Year's. Um, but I'm normally blonde. And so he felt deceived. How could this blonde, white, blue-eyed woman be born in Damascus and speak Arabic? And then he said, so you're Muslim? So you're here to slit my throat. In my mind, I was thinking, you're going to have to wait and get in line for that because there's a whole line of people that I would do before you. But I didn't say that. But, and then he's like, I read the Quran and that's what it says. And I said, well, actually, if you really read it, it would actually say only in defense, only after you have given the enemy opportunity after opportunity after opportunity for, exchange and diplomacy and whatever. And you are in self-defense and you have to protect only in that situation. Can you do that? And it got so severe that I had to get him escorted off of the property. And basically, he threatened me. And I was like, all because I spoke different languages is how it all started. But he thought my name was Sue. I was blonde and he thought I was American. And the minute that he discovered I wasn't, he flipped.
So couldn't you have him not used as a roofer?
So I did follow up with a formal, this is what's happened. And then I left the office and I said, I'm not coming back, because after I had reported him the first, second, third times, the company still had him come back. And that's a fair housing violation. And ironically, in property management, they are constantly on that groove of, did you complete your fair housing education, your requirements, your compliance? Did you, you know, yes. So, but this is an actual case
Right.
of your employee who is defending, the rest of the staff and whatever. And I basically told him, I said, you are in, you know,
Violation.
you are basically jeopardizing us by not being in fair housing compliance. You do not represent us. I cannot have you on the property speaking like this. What if one of our other employees that is Latin, Spanish speaking heard you the other day when you were saying what you were saying? He goes, I don't effing care. I don't this, I don't that. I'll say that to their face and whatever. And I said, well, then you are not in compliance and you need to leave the property. And it became a thing. It became a very big thing. And yet the company was not protective of me when I was the one that was the victim of, a fair housing violation. Because the fair housing is not just the employees, but our vendors and contractors as well cannot be. Anyway, so again, I feel that if someone could just come over for dinner and listen to my music and eat with me and feel like a king in my home, as I have been culturally trained to host, then there's no possible way that anyone could hate me after.
But I wish you were right. And I'm sure you're right sometimes. But somebody like this guy that has such strong feelings, you know, reality is not as solid as we think it is. Reality reality depends on the eyes that see it
Mhm.
and how he will see something and interpret it will have to do with who he is, what he's learned, what his experiences are.
But I do believe that when it's a one-on-one relationship is when
You
they
got
can
the
change.
you
I
got a shot.
really do.
You got a shot.
It's one-on-one. It's the courage for me to be me in front of someone like that and basically, pull him into my world and say, look, this is what you're missing out on. I bring value to you in this crazy world, and it's not what you think. Like, it's not Sharia law, it's not slitting throats and whatever, but, give me the chocolate, nobody gets hurt.
Well,
So,
okay, I'll give you this. If if you could get him to do that, it might show that he would have enough openness to 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 believe what he sees in your and in your hospitality.
okay. Yeah. And I think that is the way that we all have to handle this. Like it is a one-on-one because when you take the herd and the group out and then it's just an intimate one-on-one relationship, then I have a chance to help them see this world and see the beauty that this culture can offer
And yes,
without any reason other than this is who I am. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm not what do you call those people that are preaching and trying to spread the message or anything? Like, no, no, I am just me. And I would
Right.
love for you to see this as I am deeply curious about your world as well. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not going to go to a baseball game, done that, been there. Like I have explored your culture and continue by memorizing Beatles lyrics, Karen Carpenter, and like your pop culture from top to bottom. I know it. Test me. I can give you any, lyrics and pop culture and whatever. However, your culture is only 300 to 400 years old. Mine is 7,000. I'm not talking about the Muslim culture. I'm talking about my Circassian culture, which is 7,000 years old. I come from the Amazons. I am an original Amazon. So why deny yourself the opportunity to actually sit and talk with someone that actually has something that is not available in history books?
Well, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah. So unless you are really just not curious about life in the world and people or anything like that, like really, if you are content in that your superiority complex, that you are the only and the best and the only species worthy of existence.
It takes courage. It takes courage to what can I say? Question your own values.
Yes, yes. Merle, that is exactly what I start with my speaking engagements, what I talk to people about. And that is the most difficult thing to study about cultures is to study your culture from the perspective of others.
Ah,
How do others see you? And that's the most fascinating thing. Like, yeah, I get you within you inside your baseball cap and your t-shirt and, and all of that. But how do you look from the outside? If you're so ethnocentric that you just want to be you and study yourself, look at yourself from the other perspective.
but understand that when people have such a strong need to muscle their way into wherever, that the spark that causes that energy is fear, is
Mm,
insecurity.
mm. Is
It,
it?
yes,
I'm almost questioning that. Okay, I like the word that you use,
question. Go
muscle. I
ahead.
like the way you use that. But I also want to interject ego.
Sometimes that person that projects the biggest ego is the most insecure,
Mm.
which is really kind of interesting because sometimes someone with that amount of ego seems to project strength and can be really pushy. And that's how dictators are.
Mm.
But but the initial, the first cell of it all is their insecurity. Weird.
Yeah, yeah, that is, I think the pattern is proven that. Yeah.
So it's good to know that with interactions.
Mhm.
So sometimes rather than talk to their words, deal with their fear.
Well, maybe then again, like I go back to that concept of welcoming them and making them feel safe and secure and respected, and when we were in New Jersey, growing up, I dealt with a lot of gangs and, racist gangs that did not like us
Wh-
being there. And
Where in New Jersey?
it was in Clifton on Valley Road.
Is that
And
is that north? That must be north.
yeah,
Yeah,
so it's near Passaic, Bergen counties. Um, and so then, after that fiasco of 9 years of living in pure domestic terrorism, we moved to LA and we bought a 7-Eleven and we dealt with Latin gangs, Mexican gangs as well. So the common denominator that I discovered as a child, dealing with the gang mentality, dealing with that kind of scenario, was the bottom line was, what are they looking for? Respect.
yes, I believe that. Yes, absolutely.
So if I gave them the respect, and with the Mexican gangs, it was easy, because the language in Spanish naturally gives that. If you use the right words, instead of tú, usted, you know, it's there's clarity in the language that allows for you to undeniably show respect. And the proper usage of it gives that. And when you do that, then I found the Mexican gangs were very reciprocating
Right.
of that. And so then I became their hermanita, little sister,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And so it was a it was good for me to learn these lessons as a child, because they served me so much
Yes.
as an adult.
So wait. So when did you learn Spanish?
Made to teenage years, I loved Julio Iglesias. So I would listen to his songs and then figure out translations. And um, yeah, so I love the culture.
So, because okay, so what languages did you learn as a kid?
I started with Circassian,
Okay,
Arabic, German, lost German, wasn't, we were only in Germany for like two
right.
years. Um, and then English. English I struggled with because we were in that terror zone and I developed an extreme speech handicap. I was I was a lisper and a stutterer. And so I developed extreme speech anxiety. And so I shut down and I wouldn't speak. So I would only speak to adults that had authority or that I knew that I could trust. So I did not speak to another child until I was 11 years old. So I was in speech therapy. Fortunately, the public school system, school number 5, Mrs. Petunia was the one that would pull me out of class and take me into the basement. And all I remember is playing Chutes and Ladders and weird games that would reinforce the language and whatnot. And they thought I was a remedial child. And I knew I wasn't. I just couldn't speak it. And it was because of the gangs and the terrorism. So what happened, and this is what I discovered in therapy, is that because we looked like them, we were, blonde and white and blue-eyed, and they were, I kept thinking, there's nothing different between us. Why do they hate us that they're trying to kill us and bomb us and shoot us and, explode and set our house on fire and kill our dogs and poison them. And like we lived in pure terror. So as a child, all I could think of is, oh, the only difference between us is the language. So if I stop talking, they wouldn't know that I didn't speak the other language. They'll think I'm deaf.
Safety.
Safety, you see. So it was that extreme. So in order for me to come out of that shell, it required for me to master the English language far beyond my peers
Yes.
to prove to them that I wasn't remedial,
Yes.
but it was just the circumstances of terror that we were living in America. So, and now I'm a speaker. Now you can't shut me up.
So and so that you had a facility that you could teach yourself Spanish.
So, yes, working in the 7-Eleven in Whittier, California, I had access to a large Mexican customer, and so that helped. So I was able to practice, and they thought it was so cute that, and I had long blonde hair back then, very, 80s. And so they thought it was really cool at that time to try to teach somebody. And so that was great. And so I was fluid in it, not just fluent, but I was fluid. Like I didn't sound like, gracias, amigo, por favor. But because of my Arabic, the Spanish came so easily
Really?
because the languages are so similar and they're so you
Arabic to Spanish?
Arabic and Spanish. Well, remember, the Arabs had basically had the Empire of Spain and the Iberian Peninsula for 800 years. So many of the words are similar. Pantalones, pants, camisa, amis. So much of Arabic and Spanish are similar, and the vocabulary has transcended for so long that it was easy to be fluid between the two. And Spanish is such an emotional language, and Arabic is such a poetic language. So it's incredible. Like linguistically, to study both of them is just beautiful.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Who would know?
Mm,
So we ended up in a whole different place.
I know, right?
And maybe we should just go with that.